grateful to share it with you, as well as to continue our collaboration with the Sephardic Heritage Alliance. In addition to this evening's event, we have another author in collaboration with SHAI on Sunday, January 14, with Regine M. Tisson. So keep an eye out on that on our calendar. That said, we're excited to introduce our author and moderator for this evening's event. Dahlia Abraham-Klein is a writer on Central Asian Jewish history and Jewish values. Her articles have appeared on Tablet, Shabbat, Jewish Journal, and the Times of Israel. She is a teacher at Partners in Torah, offering personalized learning experience on the systems of life through Jewish wisdom. Tonight, Dahlia will be discussing her most recent book, The Stateless Central Asian Merchant, which is based on the writings of her grandfather, Chaim Abraham. Our moderator for this evening's event is Mojgan Cohanim Lancman, the president of SHAI, the Sephardic Heritage Alliance. Since its founding in 1992, SHAI's mission as a donor-supported nonprofit organization has been to preserve the ancient Persian Jewish heritage and to enhance the lives of the Iranian Jewish community living in the metropolitan New York area. SHAI's programming and events serve to unite this diverse community across Long Island, New York City, and beyond. The crown jewels of SHAI's efforts and programming are the SHAI Senior Center and providing scholarships for yeshiva and university students. Their scholarships have assisted hundreds of families in acquiring Jewish education and higher educational degrees, enhancing the entire community. SHAI's fully kosher and complimentary Senior Center program allows seniors to enjoy social activities with peers in their native Persian language. Through community partnerships and collaborations, such as tonight's event at the Great Neck Library, SHAI hopes to continue to build an environment of tradition, connection, and support for a vibrant community long into the future. So without further ado, we welcome Dahlia and Mojgan. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. And SHAI very much appreciates the collaboration with Great Neck Library. We've done other programs here at the Great Neck Library. We had a Nora's event last year. We do that. They usually set up a very nice half-scene table. So SHAI very much appreciates the relationship with the library tonight. I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. It's a rainy, windy, cold night. So we really appreciate your coming out and hearing Dahlia and her story. So we're going to get right into it. Dahlia, you're more than just an author of Central Asian Jewish history. You also write about, I see you have a cooking book, a challah book, and a lot of other interesting things. So you'll get to chat with Dahlia after the program if you would like. She'll be here. But getting into the book, before we get to the actual book, can you tell us about the journal itself that the book is based upon?
So the journal is on my grandfather's journal. He was born in Russian Turkestan in 1897, which is in Central Asia, in the city of Marv, which is my husband's name, right over there.
Now I know why you like it so much.
And I knew my grandfather quite well. I had no idea of his life. He never shared anything about his life. So when we translated the journal, I think a lot of what we read in the journal was shocking to all of us. My sister sent me a text today. She said his life story was actually quite surprising, even though we knew him. And he started to write his journal out at the age of 90. And when you think about, and it was extremely detailed, like he could name his elementary school teacher. It was extremely detailed, and if you think about, like, as a merchant, the fact that his memory was so sharp at 90 years old, it had to be, because how did he navigate through the mountains, going from Herat to Kabul to Antkoy, to how did he navigate through with horses and camels and caravans, go to Bukhara? So he had to be very sharp, and I think it's very special, that characteristic. Plus, you're a merchant, so you're very good with numbers, so you're very snappy in your head. That's another reason. But the amount of, when you read the journal, the amount of detail that's in there is quite incredible. So we found the journal after he passed away in 1999, and we had to find a translator for the journal. I'll show you what the journal actually looks like. I'm going to move the slides.
Here, let's see a page from the journal.
Here, that's the journal.
Where did you
So-
find the journal? Where did you find it?
We found the journal in his apartment in Forest Hills, and I moved into his apartment, and when we moved into his apartment is when we found the journal. This is in Rashi script in Judeo-Farsi. So we had to translate this, and believe me, there's not a lot of people that can translate this. It was about 100 pages, this entire journal, and it went through a couple of journals. And you can't white out anything, so you really had to remember everything.
You didn't make any mistakes.
In a lot of detail, no mistakes. So we found someone in Israel to translate the journal. It took a few years and some money, because there's only a handful of people that could actually translate the journal. And nobody read it. For 20 years, nobody bothered to read the journal, which was translated to Hebrew. I picked up the journal and I read it 5 years ago. And that's when I said, when I started to read the journal, I said, this has to be published because there's nothing like this. If a first person, I read it in Hebrew, and it was incredulous. And what I'm going to share tonight is very small of his lifetime because we're limited in time. But this is just what the journal looked like.
This was like his diary, or he just one day decided to write?
So at 90 years old, you have no more friends, everybody's dead. So you're looking for companionship, and I believe this was his companionship. So he carried this wherever he went, and he would write out, even the years, he wrote everything out. When the Tsarist Revolution started, he wrote everything out. World War II, where he was, he wrote everything.
Can you tell us a little bit about the world that your grandfather was born into?
Right. He was born in Marv, 1897, in Russian Turkestan. He describes in the journal his family background. His parents were also from Marv as well, but we originally came from Mashhad. But he doesn't talk about that because he recognizes himself as an Afghan. That's how, and like you even said, Jack is an Afghan, right? He doesn't say I'm Persian. We always said that we're Afghans, and my mother's side is Bukharian. My mother's book is in this book, Caravan of Hope. That's my mother's story. And it's very different because the female version of Afghanistan Bukharian life is very different from the male version of Afghan Bukharian life. So my grandfather describes the community that was in Marv at the time. There was a Persian community, there was an Ashkenazi community, there was a Bukharian community, and there was an Afghan community. He said the Ashkenazi community was maybe 30 families, so he described the communities in detail.
Can we see a picture? Can we go to the slide of the triangle then?
Okay, here's the triangle. This is the Jewish triangle. This is a real map of what it looked like, and as a merchant, you traveled within this triangle over here. You'll see I have a legend over there describing the Jewish communities. My grandfather spoke extensively about, as a merchant, you're traveling all the time. So the way that it worked, and you'll, I think this is blocking this. So here we have Bukhara, Herat, and Mashhad. You can see over here, the Bukharians, the Heratis, the Mashhadis. My family originally, when we were originally in Mashhad in the 1850s, that's my ancestry, which I'm going to show you actually interestingly enough. I'm going to go back one slide. This is my ancestry.com, and this is how it came back. It showed the expulsion out of Israel to Iraq, to Persia, to Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan. This was at Ancestry.com. This shows actually the expulsion of my ancestry. So what happened is, in 586 BCE, the Jews were exiled out of Judea to the greater Persian Empire through the Babylonian exile. You can see that's where we started, from Israel. We end up in Iraq, we get pushed in further into Iran. 70 years after the Babylonian exile, King Cyrus allowed the Jews in Persia to move back to rebuild the Second Temple. Most Jews said no, and we want to stay, we're comfortable now. And it's very reminiscent of how we are here also. We're very comfortable. So most Jews stayed. So I'm going to fast forward. In 1948, when Israel gained its independence, the Afghan community left because they did not want to miss that opportunity again. For thousands of years, they stayed, and they said, now the state of Israel gained its independence, we're going to leave now. And that's when the entire community practically picked up and left. So this is my ancestry over here, and now I'll go back to the
Alright,
Jewish
so
triangle.
I just want to, on this map, the Jewish triangle, Mashhad is somewhere like over here?
Mashhad is bordering, yes, because it's bordering Turkmenistan.
Turkmenistan.
Yes.
And then, so it went like this, kind of, right?
So the Jews from Mashhad, because it's bordering Turkmenistan and very close to Afghanistan, went to Herat. That's where the Jews of Mashhad went. It's known as the Al-Adad conversion. It was either you die or you convert. So my family left. My family left, and they went to Herat. But then what happened is, this is the Jewish triangle again. What happened is, this is the pogrom that happened, known as the Al-Adad. They were either given a choice to either convert to Islam or die. So what happened is, in the case of my family, so they moved to Herat, and then the Qajars come to Persia, and then we have to leave again. Many Jews went back to Mashhad, and my family, my ancestry, went to live in Marv, Russian Turkestan, which I'm going to get back to. Let me see how many. I'm just looking for where is. This is the Qajar takeover in 1856 in Herat. And okay, so my family moves to Marv, and that's how my grandfather ends up being born in Marv, and his parents live in Marv. You have a question?
Yes. You keep on saying Marv. Where is that on the map?
Oh, I'm going to show you right now then. So that I'll show you right now where that is on the map. Do you see where it says Mary, Merv? It's the way I'm saying it.
It's in Turkmenistan.
Yes.
I don't see it.
Midway,
I'm
where you
gonna-
see all the towns right smack.
I'll be
in the middle.
Manawite.
It's there.
It's right here.
Okay, so where is Iran on the map?
Right to the left. To the left.
This is it,
Okay,
yeah.
I
You see how close it is?
Mashhad is here. Mashhad is here.
I
And
see
show
Marv.
Afghanistan.
Marv is here.
And where's
Marv
Herat?
and
Where's
Mazar Sharif.
Herat?
This is Afghanistan. Kabul is down here. Mazar Sharif.
Herat is right there. It's next to Mashhad.
It's down here.
So the Persians, yes, the Persians went to, the Mashhadis went to Herat. Eventually the Qajars come, and
So they went from here to here.
To Herat,
The Qajars
correct.
come, and then they go back.
they go,
back,
so many Mashhadis go back.
Right.
We went to Marv, up all the way
You
up
went
there.
up here.
We went all the way over there. And why did we go there? Which I'm going to show you. Because we are merchants. What do merchants need? They need the railway system. So they moved to Marv because Marv, believe it or not, was a very modern city. Today I heard it's a dump, but it was a very modern city. And they had the Trans-Caspian Railway that they could take the railway, which is what they needed as a merchant. Herat didn't have it. This was more modern. So this is the reason why why my grandfather and his parents were in Marv, Turkmenistan, over here. Let me just see where we are.
And we talk a little bit about the Jewish triangle, the exchange, the relationship between the different communities.
Yes,
and the
I'm going to
Jewish
go
triangle.
back to the Jewish triangle. In the journal, my grandfather spoke about how, as a merchant, they would all travel from one city to the next, and they would find a wife where they would travel to, get married, bring her back. And that's the way it was. They all intermarried within the Jewish triangle. My grandfather spoke about marrying a Syrian woman, so they would even bring back a Syrian woman to live
a Bukharian would marry an Afghan. That's why I said I'm half Afghan, I'm half Bukharian. One side is Afghan, one side is Bukharian. So they all intermingled because all of these trade networks was their safety. Because I'll give you an example, because he spoke about this. An Afghan man is traveling to Bukhara, let's say, for business. He wants to get married, and it's a decision like that. There's not a love story here. I need to get married, and that's it. You make a decision to get married. So in his travels, he would meet a woman, a family. It was a family friend that said, go meet this woman. He would meet a woman in Bukhara, and this Bukharian woman would come back to Afghanistan, which is what happened with my grandmother, actually. She was Bukharian. She came back to Afghanistan. She went back 100 years. She wasn't happy. So what happens is, let's say now there's a problem in Afghanistan. So this is how it's safeguarded. So now let's go to my wife's family in Bukhara. So this is how these trade networks saved them. It was a safeguard for them because there was such kinship amongst this trade network that they could travel and have their families and say, oh, I know a friend, I know a family member in another town. There's a nice girl over there. And that's how the language became, they all understood each other in Judeo-Persian, and they all wrote in Rashi scripts, so they all understood each other. So this is generally how it was. My grandfather spoke in Marv that there was 4 different communities that I told you about, but he also said that at Simchat Torah, that the entire Jewish community came to his family for Simchat Torah, and they did Sukkot together. So that was...
Right, so, and there were different synagogues, so there was the Irani synagogue?
Yes, there was the Irani synagogue, the Afghan synagogue. My grandfather was the rabbi for the Ashkenazi synagogue, because he said they were very small. And I had to do research, because why was there even an Ashkenazi synagogue? I was asking. It was because they moved during, they were running away from the south of Russia. That's where they were running away from, so they came to Marv. In fact, in Bukhara, there were Ashkenazi Jews running away during World War II. That's the reason why there were Ashkenazis. And another thing is my grandfather wrote in the journal that he ended up being a caretaker in an orphanage in Bukhara for Jewish children. And you wonder, like, which children is he talking about? And it was because of war. These parents couldn't hold on to their children. We have no idea the kind of famine that they had. My grandfather said he didn't even have money to buy bread. That's how poor they were. That's really, there was a famine that ravaged. There was typhus that they lived through that killed millions of people. So this is all what's going on, and he writes about all of this extensively.
Right, so the story of the orphanage, that just brings up another, because he was in Bukhara for a business purpose.
Yes.
And then someone comes to him and says...
The communists came to him and said, we want you to take care of this orphanage of Jewish children of 150 children. A lot of children. I never knew that my grandfather, no one in my family knew my grandfather was a caretaker in a Jewish orphanage in Bukhara. We never knew, he never told us. And he said that he was responsible for all of their care for 1 year. And he was already married. So he was already married.
He had a family.
He had a family.
Staying for a year.
Yes, and the responsibility always that you feel, that's the other thing, Moj,
Right,
about the week.
that's what I wanted to talk about.
Right.
The sense of communal responsibility that these communities had. If you were a Jew from Bukhara, if you were a Jew from Afghanistan, you had, from what I read in his book, there was always a sense of responsibility for the Jewish community, no matter where you were.
Right.
You were responsible for each other. So
Just in the manner of how he wrote in the journal.
right.
He wrote in the journal, he did it, when he wrote in the journal, he never ever wrote, I did this, we did this. Even though this was a journal that no one was ever going to read, none of us were meant to read it, he wrote this, I believe, as companionship. But the fact that he saw himself as part of a collective is something that's astounding, because his success, his failures, is always a we. And it just goes to show, he didn't see himself as an individual. It's almost like It's disrespectful to see himself as an individual. He saw himself as a we, which shows me his mutual responsibility that he has representing the communities. I mean, that's very powerful, I think, that he saw himself that way.
Is that
Yeah.
a question, please? Okay, so, traveling to all these places, what
Yes.
was your grandfather's
Trade.
language? And
He spoke many languages. He spoke Russian, he spoke Persian, he spoke Tajik, he spoke the Turkic language, he spoke the Judeo-Farsi and Bukhari, similar, Dari. He spoke all of those languages. And Hebrew as well, yes. You have a question?
And these people were merchants, what were they selling?
So that was the part that we can,
What didn't they sell?
what didn't they sell? I'll give you an example of how they thought as a merchant. My grandfather was in a sanitarium in Central Asia.
It was a health facility.
It was a health facility, it's a health, oh yeah. It's a health facility, a spa, where they drink kumis milk. Have you ever heard of kumis? You've heard of kumis. It's considered Central Asian champagne. It's horse milk.
Fermented.
It's fermented horse milk, and you go to this place regularly. This was a thing Jewish people went to, and you 2 months, 3 months at a time, you sit and you drink horse milk. So because he had lung disease, so this is what they did. They went to these spas to drink this horse milk. So he said that in one of his times that he went every summer. He lived till 102, so something worked. He wrote his journal at 90, something worked. So he wrote that while he was there, he noticed that they had very nice tasting honey, which they don't have in Afghanistan. So he said, I'm going to import this honey. So to answer your question, you had to have a lot of creativity and ingenuity and be on your toes and think, what can I sell? Because your lens is always sell. What can I sell? So he sold honey. So he also sold ice. He was an iceman. The trade, though, of Central Asian Jews in general was caracal. I don't know if you know what that is. Caracal is a sheep that is a short-tailed, you ever see those Persian fur coats?
Yeah.
They're kind of ribbed, they're curly. That's the caracal, that's what they look like. In one of the photos, I'll show you a typical picture of what it looks like. My grandfather's wearing a fez hat like that. That's the caracal skin that he's wearing. So Central Asian Jews, they were in the caracal skin business. They were also, I have another photo, they were in the color dye business, and they sold color dyes and silk fabrics. That was very typical. But my grandfather also was in currency. He ended up importing tea, and eventually he moved to Japan. And that's the life of a merchant, and that you're always thinking, and eventually what happens in our case is that we stopped getting chased and we started moving before we could be chased. So that's what happened in our case. So we started to move before we're going to be chased. And my grandfather and my family ends up in the Far East. That's where they end up. So I'll move forward here. Moshe, is there something?
Yeah, so I wanted to go back and hit on a couple of other issues before we move on. So,
Yeah, Rachel.
So they talk about how a lot of trading happened in Samarkand.
Samarkand.
Yeah, is that where?
That's where, so it's good you asked me about Samarkand. So what happened is, now my family, my grandfather, he's born in Marv, in Russian Turkestan. What happened is, Tsarist Russia conquers Marv, and they categorize the Jews into 3 distinct categories. My grandfather is considered Afghan, so he has to leave. Many of the Jews of Marv go back to Mashhad. my family, some go to Herat, my family goes to Samarkand because his uncle lives there. And his uncle said, come, we'll help you. Come live with us in Samarkand. So that's what happened. They moved to Samarkand. I have a photo. Oh, here's Samarkand. This is my great-grandfather. His name is Amin Kabuli, but not really. His name was Benjamin Abramov, but Amin is short for Amin. Amin is short for Benjamin, and Kabuli, because the way last names worked, is because you have an add-on to your name. If your last name was Abraham, and there's thousands of Abrahams, they needed an add-on to distinguish who you are. So his last name was Abramov, but he became known as Amin Kabuli because he came from Kabul. He moved to Samarkand. This is his compound, which my brother and my parents went back to Samarkand. This is in the late part of the 1800s. He built this compound that's the size of a city block. This was his house. It still exists today. I have video footage. It's not here today. But this was in the house. You had multiple families. You had a synagogue. You had Torah scrolls. There was a wedding hall inside the compound as well. And he became extremely wealthy because he had a winery. This was his winery called Benjamin Abramov and Brothers. His daughter, Rachel, is the last child. My grandmother married my grandfather. He had 3 wives and 18 children. That's why he needed a big home. He needed a big home over here. He had a big property. So this was confiscated.
What year was this? Oh, 1880s, okay.
1880s.
The Bolsheviks?
The Bolsheviks, what happens is, what's something that's very nice about the Central Asian Jews that's very nice is that both sets of my great-grandfathers were members of the First Guild, which means you've got a lot of money. They're very, very wealthy, which means you don't need permits to travel. You can go to Moscow freely. You can buy lands. You can own factories. So there was a period for Jews in Central Asia, Bukharian Jews, where they could make a lot of money, and their children were educated. My grandmother was more Soviet in her way. She had piano lessons. She spoke Russian. She was very sophisticated. The Bolsheviks came, took everything away, and this is what happened. And this is when the family became destitute again. This is what happened to Central Asian Jews repeatedly. It was up and down and fluctuating. But in the journal, do you sense any bitterness at all?
None at all, none at all. He was never bitter.
No victimhood?
No victimhood at all. He talked about, I tried to keep count how many times in his life he lost everything, where things were confiscated, stolen, just taken from him. And it was, oh, and I lost everything.
It was just like matter-of-factly.
Right.
And oh well, I'll start again. It almost sounds like a Forrest Gump story. It almost has that kind of feel. Yes?
You mentioned quickly about how how the Afghan part of the family left Israel when Israel became the state of Israel. You said they left.
No, they went.
What did you say?
They left Afghanistan for Israel.
Oh, did I misspeak? No, they went in 1949.
Right, that's what I wanted to, if you could just review that, so we know.
1950? 1950. 2 years later. Jonathan?
How big is the Jewish population in the triangle, really?
At that time?
At that time.
I would say the Afghan community maybe was 10,000, 15,000. The Bukharian community was much bigger.
And then the winery, the Bolsheviks came in, and when is that, the early 20s when they did that?
No, before. It was already early 1900s.
Well, it would have been after the 1917 revolution.
It was, so what happens is, it's very unclear because this gets converted to a cotton factory. It's very unclear, but it gets taken over by the state. He lost everything. By 1905, he's already dead.
Okay.
He's already dead at that time.
Where did his
My great-grandfather.
Where did his family go?
To Samarkand. They stayed in Samarkand. My grandfather met his wife in Samarkand.
How did they get back to Afghanistan?
So they moved back.
There was a lot of moving around.
There's a lot of moving around.
There's a lot of
You go where the money goes. You know, you go where the pool goes. That's the bottom line.
Right, there was two things. There was physical safety and being welcomed and being allowed to stay there as a Jew.
Right.
At some point that would expire, then they would move elsewhere, or trade would be better elsewhere.
Right.
And
That's
they would
the
move.
other thing. Very important point. My family was stateless. That's the very important point. They're stateless. They don't have citizenship anywhere. Eventually, my grandfather gets Afghan citizenship, but only because, and I'll show you what the passport looked like. This is his passport from 1943, which I have in my possession. If you look, first of all, interesting, it's written in French. And it's by the solar year. If you look over there, it says his date of birth is 1270, he's 41 years old. He wasn't born in Herat, like it says. He was born in Marv, because you had to know somebody to buy your citizenship. So throughout his former years, he doesn't have any citizenship. You're on the good graces of who you can buy to move through all of these places. That's why if they moved to Herat, it's because they knew someone over there. So this is his Afghan passport. By the way, this passport was 40 years, this passport, and he had to renew it every year. And this was what the government did to keep tabs every year, where is he? And to charge him a fee. And this is what they did. So this was his passport over here.
So you have to go in every year to renew it?
Yes, no matter where he was, so they can keep tabs on him.
They only charge Jews a fee?
So the Jews had a special tax, the jizya.
Could we talk about a little bit about the status of the Jews in the triangle and
About the status?
yeah,
Okay.
community status, and what that actually, even though it was a second-class status, what it offered them?
Not much. What did it offer them? The dhimmi status. So they were allowed to engage in certain professions. So in Afghanistan, for example, the Afghans were complaining that the Jews are taking our business. And the business of the Afghans was caracals. So they took it away from the Jews, and they now gave it to the Afghans. So that's what happened, is that they were essentially powerless. Do you want to talk about how the banking system?
Yeah, right.
The banking
so
system?
Then they lost the caracal business.
They lost the caracal business.
Go into
Then they went into, what happened is, they conducted businesses in Central Asia in something called sarais. This is what it looked like, this sarai over here. So it's a compound, it's a fortress. Every 6 donkey days, you travel to this fortress. This is where the Jews would conduct business, and they would bring their donkeys, horses. There was a big archway for them to enter over here, and it was like a Motel 66 kind of place, where they would stay over there. On the second floor is where they would sleep. On the first floor is where they would trade. So what happened is, in Afghanistan, my grandfather wrote about this as well, they made the Jews form a company together, and this was to control them. They made the Jews form a company together.
that's already the Shekat Academy.
Yes.
So the Shekat Academy, Afghanistan,
Yes,
was from 1934 to 1938.
right.
And
What did you write in your notes? What did you write in your
right,
notes?
so it's formalized because, all right, but that's going a little bit ahead.
But that's
also.
okay, because that explains what happens to the Jews
Right.
in
because-
Afghanistan.
Because in 1933, Mohammad Zahir Shah in Afghanistan revoked the citizenship of all Jews.
Correct,
So now they don't have citizenship
Correct.
any longer.
right.
And
He sequestered them to the north part of Afghanistan. That's where he sequestered them. You're gonna live over there in the north. So he sequestered them there, and they couldn't leave. Hold on a second.
right, but then they said, well, we need people, all right, because this is 1934, right? It's nationalism, there's closed borders. Russia and
Right.
Afghanistan closed down their borders.
Right,
Whereas before when you had that Jewish triangle, you were able to have it because people were pretty much moving freely between these all these cities between Mashhad, Harad, Moab,
Freely, it depended on who you knew
right.
to help you move freely,
You could
let's
move-
just say.
Yeah, you could move.
It depended on who you knew that could kind of sponsor you.
Right, but then they closed down the borders and then they said, well, we need fabric from Russia.
Right,
So they formed this Shirkat Kalimi Afghanistan, and then they go and buy and sell Russian fabrics
correct,
because they needed it.
correct.
So they set up this so it gave the Jewish community some kind of formal recognition, and it allowed Afghani society to have.
Yeah, but in the end, they screwed them.
But it was only 4 years.
What happened is, they told the Jews, you need to form a partnership with us.
With the government.
With the government, with the bank. It was called Bank Meli, that's what it was called. And you need to form a partnership with us. And what happened is, so they said, okay, you need to buy through the bank, through the Afghan bank. So the Jews had to pull their money together, give it to the Afghan bank to buy, and then sell it back to them. And what happened is they kept their money. That's what happened. They kept their money, and again, they're broke. There's nothing that they can do. And this kind of stories that my grandfather goes through is repeated. It's happening all the time. And what was incredible in my grandfather's journal is that you don't sense any bitterness. It's like, okay, this is life. He doesn't see himself as a refugee, which he kind of is in today's times. He's a refugee. There's no bitterness. There's just, because his focus is on his community. And the other thing we should talk about is Muslim-Jewish relations.
Right, I wanted to hit on that, and then the relationship to Israel.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So what year did they leave Samarkand to go back to Afghanistan?
I think it was 1930s already that they started to go. I think it was 1930s.
So late.
I think it was 1930s. Yeah, I think it was around 1930s because she was born 1933. So maybe late 1920s, maybe like 1920. Jonathan?
Was it voluntary or was it Stalin enforcing his anti-Jewish?
It was Stalin. It was Stalin. Sorry, you had a question?
About what year is that, what's on the screen?
Picture? Or when these?
That market?
This market, I would say this is late 19th century. This is late 19th century.
So let's talk about a little bit about the Muslim-Jewish relationships. There was relationships with Muslims, and there was a relationship with Muslim authorities.
Right. This is how my family eventually attained citizenship. My mother too. My mother was born in Uzbekistan in prison, and she had also Afghan passport. And because you had to know somebody. So what I wanted to say about the Afghan Muslim-Jewish relationship is my family had a relationship with the ministers because they all wanted to do business with Jews for trade. This is really what they wanted. So they had a relationship. In one incident, and actually there were two incidents. My one incident is where, which story is this? The story, which one did I want to say?
Well, we could talk in general about that they respected Jews because they were.
Oh, my grandfather was doing business with the Minister of Finance in Afghanistan. The Minister of Finance was offered a position to the king at the time. So he offered this Minister of Finance position to my grandfather, which I thought was pretty incredible that they would give that position to a Jewish person. And the reason why is because they respected Jewish traders. They kept their word. They saw them as God-fearing. And trust, exactly right. And I felt like that Muslim-Jewish relationship has been overlooked in history. Is looking at our history, how did we manage with our Muslim-Jewish relationship? And there was a good relationship. Another incident was where the Afghans were suspicious of Soviets. And my grandfather spoke Russian, but it was not an issue for him because they used him to decipher messages that were going across borders. They wanted him to read Russian messages to see if there were any spies. They suspected that Bukharian Jews in Afghanistan were spies. So there were,
Because they spoke Russian.
because they spoke Russian, and they were afraid that they were with the communists. So there was an incident.
Right, and they differentiated between the Jews that were born in Afghanistan
Right.
and the Bukharian Jews that were coming down
Correct.
into Afghanistan.
So there was an incident where there was a Jew from Samarkand that my grandfather knew, and the police in Afghanistan beat this man from Samarkand, and my grandfather came and vouched for him and said, "Don't you dare beat my guest, beat me." And that's how much clout he had with the police, and the police stopped. So there was relationships that they had with the police. But a lot of the relationships came because they wanted to do business with Jews and they trusted them. Because once the Jews left Afghanistan, Afghanistan collapsed. It really did. They had no one to trade with anymore. They didn't say to themselves, let's trade with each other, because the Jews were the engine of the trade in Central Asia.
Right, and you told me about, there were times where Jews were able to, when the clans, there would be warring clans or clans that, did not get along with each other.
Right.
The Jews as third parties.
Could do business. Right, they could do business, Jews at third parties, and they could go in certain locations that the tribes could not sometimes go to as well. But this changed, this status changed year to year. It really depended, because the way they wanted to get rid of a king, they didn't wait for him to die, they would kill him. And then there's a change of power, and that's how it went. It was just like the Emir of Bukhara. In Bukhara, was ousted out of Bukhara, and where did he run to? Afghanistan. So this was happening all the time, and that's why it was changing. The political situations were changing all the time. The other thing is, in the journal, you don't get a sense at all throughout any of the political upheavals that he's going through, and there's so many, that it's in the foreground of his life. It's all in the background of his life. It's not taking over like the way politics takes over today, that we speak about it. There was so much more upheaval, and you never hear, it was just, he spoke about it, but it was in the background, because the foreground of his life is being a merchant, being Jewish, being in a family, community, and that's it, that's the focus. And that's their survival. Yes?
Did they have Jewish doctors that they trusted?
No. There were no Jewish doctors. I wrote about a story with my mother in Afghanistan as a girl. That's in the book Caravan of Hope. My mother had diphtheria. Girls were not allowed into hospitals in Afghanistan. In my mother's case, what happened is only boys were allowed to go to hospitals. So her mother said, let's cut all her hair off, dress her as a boy, and take her to the hospital. But not even her mother could take her to the hospital. A male escort had to take her to the hospital, and the male escort had to stay with my mother in the hospital as well. So there was no medical facility for women, and there was any medical facility, any medical doctors in Afghanistan, they were German. It was a German doctor.
Wow.
It was not, there's no college. There's no college. Where are they getting educated? But the Germans were in Afghanistan. Sorry, you had a question?
Yeah, I might have missed it. I came a few minutes late, but how did you find the journal? How did this come
Oh,
about?
I moved into his apartment in 1999. That's how we found the journal.
And how long is the journal?
It's about 100 pages.
And in what language? You said it's the Rashi?
It's Judeo-Persian in Rashi script.
So you speak?
No way.
So how did you translate?
We found a translator in Israel.
So it had to be translated into Hebrew?
And then from Hebrew, I translated to English. And I write that maybe some things got lost in translation because my Hebrew, then I translated to English. And then the names also, some names are very odd. Another thing I will say, which I shared with Moj, that I didn't know, but Moj knew this, is he often will speak about someone and he'll say Haji this, Haji that. I didn't know until I researched that they adopted Muslim names, honorifics, if they did the Hajj to Jerusalem.
Yes.
So if you did the Hajj to Jerusalem, you got the honorific title of Haji,
Yeah, yeah.
which I didn't know. So
Yeah.
that was one of the things
So
that I
what-
discovered.
So like my grandfather, we never called him grandfather because my dad's family made Aliyah in the 50s and then they went back to Iran because life was too hard. I called my grandfather Haji. That's what I called him. And I thought, at first I think when I was younger, I used to think that's what you call old men. And then at some point I learned because he had made the pilgrimage to Jerusalem, that's what we called him Haji. I never called him grandfather, I always called him Haji.
Right.
So one more thing, so it's in Rashi script, but it's written in Farsi?
Yeah.
So anybody who could read Rashi and understands Farsi can understand it?
Yeah, you wanna read it?
Yeah,
Should be
maybe.
able to.
I understand Farsi and I could read
You
Rashi.
could read Rashi script.
Yeah, so,
Right.
This is the journal.
Yeah.
well, I can't read the handwriting though.
So if you I've seen at American Sephardic Federation actually that has an archive also. I've seen their letters of reference for merchants in Persian and written in Rashi script that merchants would take from one city to I think this traveled maybe from Iran to India or something, and that was basically this guy's credit worthy. You can trust him. You could give him material. He'll pay you back, something like that. So this was just really, it was going all over the world. This Judeo-Farsi Rashi script was used a lot.
But why Rashi? Why not Hebrew?
Because
Rashi seems so advanced.
Because what it was the Aramaic, and it was the language that they knew, that they spoke
It was
in.
very common, by the way.
Yeah, it was very common back then.
Maybe they
That's the
studied
script
it.
they used.
Maybe
It-
during their education, they studied in Rashi.
Right, or it's something that stayed with the community. It's sort of like Hebrew was too holy. It's for the Torah and Torah learning. So the Rashi script, which is very close to Hebrew, that's what they used in their daily lives. And many of these people were illiterate in Persian, but they knew the Hebrew because they
It's quite the opposite
because they
now.
learned.
Like now it's like you might know Hebrew, you might know Farsi, but who, not too many.
That's
people
why we got a translator.
know. Yeah, not too many people
You
know
have to go to
Rashi.
yeshiva to know,
Yeah.
right? We learned Rashi script in Beis Yaakov, right?
Yes.
I have a question.
Did he keep it secret? Was the diary kept a secret and you just happened to
No,
find
it wasn't, no, I
It was
saw him
about-
scribbling.
Oh, you saw him
I
scribbling?
saw him
Right.
scribbling.
But he would have been happy to see that this was, that people are learning all
He
this.
was a very, 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 I think he would be shy. I think he would be very shy if he knew that I published this journal. I think so. I think he'd be very shy. Yes?
I know about Judeo-Persian languages, like Judeo-Persian, Judeo-Isfahan, all that. But what is Judeo-Rashi? What is
No,
that?
no, Judeo-Persian.
No, Rashi. What is that?
Rashi's Aramaic script. Rashi was a commentator, was a very well-known, famous Rashi commentator on the Torah.
Yeah.
So he wrote in Aramaic script, and so that's what everybody knew to read and write.
I-
So it's really, as you just said, is
Aramaic,
Okay.
Aramaic,
Okay.
yeah.
I-
Yeah, question in,
Yeah, people told me that they saw in Iran, older people, that merchants who weren't even Jewish kept their books in Rashi script. Well, that's probably the case, but they said that maybe 3 or 4 generations back, they were Jewish, but they continued to keep their books in Farsi.
So they were perhaps crypto Jews. I want to end first, and then we can have your questions, but this is where I'd like to end. I'd like to end in Israel.
right, let's talk about the relationship.
I want to end in Israel because I just want to show something that was very significant to Central Asian Jews. I was saying that, and I'm going to go forward, when my great-grandfathers made a lot of money. This is one, and then I had another one, Mashiach Yugadayov, and he's in the book Caravan of Hope. Both of them were members of the First Guild. When they made a lot of money, and they built these huge palaces for themselves with a synagogue, and it was for the community, and they took their money collectively and they built Shchunat Bukhara in Israel. And this is where they built the Shchunat Bukhara in the 1890s. They were already saying to themselves at that time.
Which means what? Bukharian
The Bukhari neighborhood in Shchunat Bukhara in Jerusalem, they're the founders of this, and they were already saying that we need to establish ourselves. Even before its independence, their eyes were always on Eretz Yisrael, and my grandfather spoke about it extensively. In fact, his father here, Rachamim Abramov, on the camel in front of the pyramids in Egypt in 1914, he regularly made the pilgrimage to Eretz Yisrael to go and buy books for the Jewish community to bring back, either to Marv or to Bukhara or to Afghanistan. And so their eyes were always on Eretz Yisrael, so they were already making these pilgrimages to Israel. And finally, what happens is when the state of Israel gained its independence in 1948, my family was the first bus out of Afghanistan. In 1950, my mother and my cousin Tammy over here, her mother, they left Afghanistan. The entire community practically left in 1950, and they end up, and my grandfather in 1943 in Afghanistan, the Germans were in Afghanistan. Life started to get very difficult for the Jews in Afghanistan because they started to conscript Jews into the army and give them humiliating positions. They started to be very harsh on the Jews in Afghanistan, and my grandfather said to himself, I'm thinking of buying land in Israel. This is before independence. So in 1947, he went to Eretz Yisrael, he bought a plot of land, and the Arab-Israel War broke out, and he wrote about that he's in the middle of this war, and he built this property in Tel Aviv, this property over here. So it was almost like the Jews saw it as a fulfillment of, my mother was longing to go to Israel. She never has been to Israel, but they were longing to be in their homeland. Just the consciousness of the Central Asian Jews was to be in Eretz Yisrael, and this is where I'll kind of end over here. And,
Right.
and if there's any questions, I'll take them now. No questions now? Sorry?
When did you get to Israel? Were you raised in Israel?
I was not. So my mother and her sisters, there were 8 of them all together. Seven sisters, 1 brother. And they moved to Israel in 1950. They all went to school there. And I describe in Caravan of Hope the description of how it was for them. They never saw non-religious Jews. They were in shock. They thought that Jewish people are religious people. They're saying we're going to be with our people. And they were in shock when they went to Israel, and they lived across the street from a pig market. They lived across the street from a slaughterhouse. They were in shock. They didn't know. So she described her experience. Yes.
Well, you already had the
This is a different grandfather,
Right.
but in Israel they chose to not live in the ma'aberot, which was the tents, and
that's why my grandfather went back to Iran because it was too hard.
it's too hard.
Yeah.
So in the case of my family, they came with some pool. They came with some pool, and my grandmother sewed gold coins into the dresses so that they could come with some money. And my grandmother described that they had a refrigerator in Israel, and this was a very big deal. Yeah.
So just 2 things. You're talking about the ice business. I just want to say 2 things, and then we'll finish it off, and then if people can chat with Dahlia more.
Which one
Yeah.
is one?
Yeah, what was it, what about the family picture from Afghanistan? I thought you have some of those are very interesting.
So, like I said, this was the Bukharian Jews were in the business of silk and silk dyes. So you can see they're all wearing these silk robes. It's called a joma. My grandfather is wearing a caracal hat, because that was their industry as well. My grandfather is the one that's in the center wearing the joma, holding the baby. My father is the one standing in the back. And they look quite modern already. They already look quite modern. Yeah, 1940, yes. The one, your grandfather's right next to Bobosh. The little guy, in front of my dad.
And I don't think it's the baby, I think it's a little hat.
No, it's 100%. Your dad is the one in front of my dad. Your grandfather. No, the baby, no. No, the baby is Mafrat's son. Yes, that's Mafrat's son. She's already married. To the left. Yes, that's Mafrat.
Who's one in the back?
So we're just going down memory lane over here, but this is what life in Afghanistan looked like.
And there was another one where you and I were looking at it before. No, it's just this is, I think, it's a very interesting picture also.
So I'll just share with you what happened here at this photo. You'll notice that my grandfather is in the photo. He's the one, the last man to the right, standing. That's my grandfather. This most likely is around his bar mitzvah time. What happened is he wrote about in the journal. He's wearing also a hat. His family had to move to Samarkand from Marv. They moved to Samarkand because Tsarist Russians came after the Jews in Marv, so they moved to Samarkand. My grandfather had his bar mitzvah in Samarkand, and he wrote about that the authorities found out about this bar mitzvah and extradited his father to Persia, to Astarabad. I had to look that up on a map. And they had to, finally what happened is they paid somebody to go to Astarabad, if I'm saying it correctly, to go buy him Persian passport, to bring him back to Samarkand. Yeah. So my grandfather is the one standing to the right. The women sitting to the right. My grandfather's to the right. To the right, all the way to the right, that little boy over there, that's his brother Shimon. And those are his sisters that are sitting, and I have to tell you, they're probably 12, 13, 14 years old, and they're already married with kids. These women over here. Yeah, these are his sisters. And his mother is the one that's holding the baby over there. These two men are probably the Chostagors. The sisters.
So,
the sisters.
What I thought. These are girls.
Listen, I wasn't around.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I want you to know, I wasn't around.
I just want to leave off with a couple of things that I thought was important that stuck out to me. When they would make the pilgrimage to Israel, they would come back with books for the community.
Yes.
There was one time they came back with 150 books printed in the Judeo-Farsi. They would bring that back with them. There was always this connection between the communities. Israel was not this far off distant thing. It was like a real thing. And when they had the money, they would go and
build a community. Just think. It's pretty incredible.
Right. They
devotion.
Didn't wait for it to happen.
Right. And they knew this is not our home.
Right.
They knew this is not our home. Our home is Eretz Yisrael. No matter where we are, our home is Eretz Yisrael. Even though it didn't have its independence. I think that's incredible.
Yeah.
Moj, how long did a journey like that take?
A month.
A month.
And it's by camel, by caravan?
By camel, by horse, and you know what I ask, and he doesn't write about it, but
Israel?
This is to Israel. How did they get through all the borders?
Right.
I asked myself, how did they must have been paying their way through the borders.
They were just paying everyone off.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
paying their way, but
They had
imagine
to
it's
trade.
arduous journey to take.
And the other thing that all of this, it was really, they lived on their wits, is
Yes.
what I would
Yes.
have to say.
Yes.
Because look at this, your grandfather's father gets arrested.
Yes,
He gets sent back to
As-
Persia
right,
to get arrested, and somehow he comes back with passports,
Right.
okay? For these stateless people that nobody wanted them, a
Right.
passport was everything.
right,
So they really lived on their wits. Whatever was happening around them, they didn't really get too involved with it. They just cared about their family, the community,
right,
the extended community, and through that they supported each other. Oh, you lost everything here. You know, you knew a shopkeeper in another city. You would go work for him for 6 months,
right.
make some money. You would buy some material. You would come back and sell it, or you would move your family. Whatever was happening, they just lived on their wits. So I just found that so interesting.
I agree with you, and for me, one of the reasons I published the story, because I look at that and I'm like, look what he went through. We are living in such comfort, and I was just like, these are the messages that I wanted to get across. The political upheavals did not faze him. What made them survive is being Jewish. Here in America, sometimes we think, let's hide our Jewishness. Over there, it's just the opposite. They respected that you stood up for your Judaism. Not that you had a choice, really, because it's either,
Right. They knew it wasn't anything you could hide.
there was nothing you
Everybody knew
could,
who you were.
everybody knew who you were, there was no way to hide it.
Right.
But the thing is that they wanted to do business with Jews, they trusted them.
Right, so even though the Jews had second-class status,
Yes,
they were known as the people of the book.
Yes.
So in a way, they were respected.
Yes.
They had status, which
Yes.
is better than not having any status.
right,
So, and then they made it work for them. So
Right.
it's really living by their wits.
yeah.
So anyhow, Dahlia, I really want to thank you for coming out
Thank you,
tonight.
Moshe, for inviting me.